Hello everybody, Mark, aka the Nerdy Punk, back again today for a new video. I hope you all are doing well. I hope you're making it through the heat if you're dealing with that currently. Happy July, everyone. We are into a new month, and with this month I wanted to start a new series on the channel, which is going to be a recap of all of the films and the TV seasons that I watched in the past month of June 2021. Ideally, I would like to do this series every month. At the beginning of every month, I'll recap the last month's watches. And I'd like to do this moving forward as many months as possible. Now, I know when the school year starts, I'm not going to have nearly as much time to A, watch films like I've been able to watch during the summer, and to B, film the videos for them. So we'll see how many of these videos I'm able to put out, but it is certainly my goal to do this every month from here on out. So I have 2 TV shows that I was able to finish a complete season of this month in June 2021. So I'll talk about those first, and then I'll talk about the 23 movies that I was able to watch in June 2021. Now 23 is a very good number for me. Generally speaking, I average between 10 and 15 movies a month. And so this was a really good month. Obviously, I had plenty of time to watch, basically being on vacation for me. So I'm going to go ahead and go through each one of these. I'm going to say a brief word about each one, not too much, because we don't want this video to be like an hour long or anything. In the event that I have the physical media release, I will show that. If I don't have a physical media release, I'm going to show you a poster for that series. So let's get started with TV. So, I watched other TV shows during the month, but nothing that I completed a full season of. So, if I continue watching those shows, you may see them crop up on the next month's video. So, first one I watched was Season 5 of Game of Thrones. I started in on Season 6, did not finish Season 6 yet. So I hope to finish Season 6 and maybe even the whole series, who knows, in July. So we may talk about that in the next one of these recap videos. I'm not going to mention too much about Season 5 because A, I don't want to give any spoilers, and B, once I finish the complete series, I plan on doing a video where I show off all of the box sets for the Game of Thrones seasons, because I own all of them, and also to give my thoughts on each season. So I did really enjoy Season 5. It was not one of my favorite seasons of the series, but there's a lot of really good plot points, a lot of really good stories, so I definitely enjoyed Season 5 of Game of Thrones, and I marathoned this in like 2-3 days. It went by pretty quick. That was earlier on in the month. The other TV series I was able to complete a season of was George Lopez, and I do have the first and second seasons on DVD, but I don't have them with me. They're at my parents' house, so I'll go ahead and show you a poster of the series, the early part of the series. I finished Season 1, which was only 4 episodes, but I'm well into Season 2 now, and George Lopez was one of my favorite sitcoms as a kid growing up. It ended in 2007, and I started watching it very quickly after that because it was syndicated on Nickelodeon with their Nick at Night programming block, and this is just so much nostalgia for me because, again, I loved the show so much as, a kid, as an adolescent, and it just brought back so much nostalgia, so many memories, and I forgot how funny it was. Like, it's brilliant comedy. Like, it still holds up to this day. So if you didn't watch George Lopez back in the day, highly recommend it. Now into the movies. So like I said, we got a lot. We're going to go through them pretty quickly. First thing I was able to watch this month was a double feature of the Rob Zombie Halloween movies. I watched Rob Zombie's Halloween and then Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. This was the first time that I have seen Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I already watched the Rob Zombie remake of the original Halloween, and I know many people hate on these movies. I actually think Halloween 2 is better than the remake, the original Halloween. I really, really enjoyed that. Now, no film in this series will ever top John Carpenter's original. However, I really enjoy these movies, and I'm glad they exist. And of course, I am a fan of Rob Zombie. I have almost all of his films. I've seen almost all of his films, and I do really enjoy them, even the ones that are not so good. I will agree that this remake is not so great, and if you're a huge fan of the original, I can see why people didn't like it. It is filled with Rob Zombie-isms, as I like to call them. Tons of white trash characters, just disgusting dialogue, but I understand why people don't like that, but it's part of Rob Zombie's charm to me, and so I enjoy them for what they are. I'll just say that. So I watched this double feature early on in the month, and then next thing, so these are not all in perfect order of when I watched them. I've kind of grouped them by themes. So the next thing I want to talk about that I watched this month is a marathon of the Quentin Tarantino movies that I had not seen before. So if you've watched my room tour video, I mentioned that Tarantino, I think, is my favorite director. And this month in June, I finally watched all of the films of his that I had not seen before. So I'd already seen about half of his films, and I went ahead and watched through the other half that I had not seen yet. And so I'll show you each of these, give my brief thoughts. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm going to do a video within the next week or so where I rank all of Quentin Tarantino's movies. So I'm not going to give you a ton of thoughts right now. I'm going to save those for that video. So the first one here that I watched was Pulp Fiction, the classic Pulp Fiction. I had never seen it before. I don't know why, but I kept putting it off. And I'm really sorry that I put it off because it is a fantastic movie. Some of the best dialogue I've ever heard in a movie. And I know I just watched it, but it is a serious contender to dethrone The Dark Knight as my favorite movie of all time. It was that good. This is an absolute classic. I'm sure most people have seen it, but Pulp Fiction. Next one I watched, this is a double feature, so one of these movies is not directed by Tarantino, but the other half is, and that is the Grindhouse double feature with Planet Terror, directed by Robert Rodriguez, and then Death Proof, which is directed by Quentin Tarantino. I really enjoyed Death Proof, and I enjoyed Planet Terror as well. I loved the vibe they were going for with this, kind of reminiscent of an old Grindhouse theater from the 70s, a nice double feature. You know, it's got all the aesthetics. A lot of people say this is Tarantino's worst film. I disagree. I really, really enjoyed this. Next one, of course, another double feature. We have Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2. Finally checked these out. This is Tarantino's take on kind of the martial arts movies from Japan from back in the day, and really enjoyed Uma Thurman's performance. I will say I did not connect with these as much as I connected with some of his other films, but I still very much enjoyed them, and lots of iconic scenes in both of these. And then finally, to wrap up, actually no, I have two more Tarantino films. First one was Reservoir Dogs. So this is Tarantino's first film, and you really get lots of hints of what's to come from Tarantino. It's one of the better debut films from any filmmaker of all time. It's insane that this was his first film because it was so good right off the bat. And then the last one that I needed to watch was Jackie Brown, which I do not have a physical release of, so I'll put the poster up here. Jackie Brown, his kind of take on the blaxploitation films from the 70s, starring Pam Grier, who was in a lot of those blaxploitation films in the 70s. This one I really enjoyed. Not one of his best, but still a very enjoyable watch. Lots of great music in this one. Fantastic soundtrack. Great performances as always. Great dialogue. Another fantastic film. Okay. And then kind of my next theme of watches for June of 2021 was comedy. So I went on kind of a comedy binge in the last month. And so I watched a lot of comedy films from my youth, a lot of comedy films that I watched when I was, 13, 14 years old, some things that have huge nostalgia factor for me. This is right up there with, things like old school sitcoms that I used to watch, like George Lopez and Full House and Three's Company. I have so much nostalgia with those shows, but I have equal, if not more, nostalgia with kind of the raunchy teen comedies from the 2000s and the 90s, because I really grew up with those. Those were huge for me just in kind of my formative teen years. And so I went on a kind of a binge with those movies. So the first one I want to talk about here is Superbad, of course, written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. Kind of an autobiographical film in a way about their life, and stars, of course, Jonah Hill and Michael Cera. Such a classic, fantastic comedy. This comes from 2007. And this film was so relatable to me growing up. Like, I literally felt like I had the same life as these guys. And so it was just a great movie to put on, to have some fun, to get some nostalgia, to have a few drinks, and, just enjoy myself. So, Superbad, fantastic comedy. Next one I want to talk about that I watched, this is actually a DVD set. So, out of these 4 movies, I watched American Pie 2 this month. So I have actually watched all of these films fairly recently. In the past year or so, I have watched American Wedding, American Reunion, and the original American Pie. And now, of course, I watched American Pie 2. I have seen all these films multiple times, and I love them. Again, so much nostalgia. The original American Pie is one of my favorite comedies of all time. And American Pie 2 is just as good, in my opinion. It's one of the rare sequels that I think lives up to the original. It's not a carbon copy exactly of the original, but it's funny. It's just as funny. And, again, so much nostalgia for me as well. Next one to talk about in the American Pie series is this one, American Pie Presents The Book of Love. And this is it's one of those straight-to-DVD releases that the American Pie series put out in the mid-2000s. This one actually came out perfect time for me. I was 13 years old when this came out, so, it was perfectly aimed at my demographic, and I really did enjoy this one. And I enjoyed it on a rewatch as well. Not nearly as much as I enjoyed it back in the day, but it's kind of a standalone movie in a way, because, of course, it has Eugene Levy in it, which he's been in almost all of the films, even the spin-offs. But none of these other characters were in any of the other films. So it's kind of like a standalone release in that way. And, it's just enjoyable. It's not going to win any awards. It's not a fantastic film, but it was an enjoyable comedy that, I could just put on and relax and maybe have some nostalgia. Next one along those lines is The Girl Next Door, which came out in 2004. And this is kind of an underrated kind of sleeper teen comedy from the 2000s. Again, a movie that I watched growing up that I enjoyed. It's funny. Is it Emile Hirsch, I think, is the main character in this. Basically plays this straight-laced, goody-two-shoes character who falls in love with a former porn star who moved next door to his parents. So you can imagine all the kinds of chaos that ensues with that storyline. But again, such a fun, and it's actually, believe it or not, despite the plot, it's actually kind of a heartwarming story. I know many people will not believe that on face value, but it is. It's kind of a heartwarming film. So I really enjoyed that one and was able to rewatch that this month. And then let's see, I'm just kind of checking my paper here, make sure I don't forget anything. I watched 3 of the Todd Phillips movies. Todd Phillips, of course, made Joker a couple years ago, and he got an Oscar nomination for that. But before that movie, he was known for making, again, kind of raunchy-style comedies. And so he made the Hangover trilogy, and I watched I rewatched the original Hangover this month, as well as The Hangover Part 2. And those are the original Hangover, again, one of my favorite comedies, another movie that I watched back in the day, growing up. Hangover Part 2, I always enjoyed. I know a lot of people hated on that film because it's basically the same movie. They've just changed the locations. And I get that. It's not the most innovative story. They basically took what worked in the first movie and put it in the second movie. And it still works, in my opinion. It's still funny. It's still enjoyable. I like the setting in Bangkok, Thailand. And so I rewatched that. And then I also watched, I can't remember if I watched this one back in the day or not, but I watched his film with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis, which was Due Date from 2010, I believe. Really enjoyed that one. That was another funny, over-the-top comedy, directed by Todd Phillips, starring Zach Galifianakis. It was enjoyable. And then, finally, in the comedy realm, I was able to rewatch one of, again, my favorite comedies, The Big Lebowski, which is, of course, directed by the Coen brothers, stars Jeff Bridges, and what's his name? John Goodman. John Goodman's performance in this movie is so funny. He is hilarious in this movie, every scene you get with him. But that was a movie that I didn't watch back in the day. It's a movie that I watched very recently for the first time, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And I really enjoyed that one. Unfortunately, I don't have that on physical media. I need to get a copy of that. But I was able to rewatch The Big Lebowski. Now, moving on. The only film that I was able to see in the theaters this month was the new Conjuring film, The Devil Made Me Do It. Not really going to talk too much about that one because I did a movie review for that when I went out to the theater to see it. So if you're interested in my thoughts on that movie, definitely go to find that video on my channel. And then, we're almost to the end, I rewatched Fahrenheit 9/11. For some reason, I was in a documentary mood the other night, so I was able to rewatch this one. Of course, a Michael Moore film that I watched back in the day about, of course, the 9/11 attacks, the Bush presidency, and the Iraq War. And it's a really hard-hitting take on that with some of Michael Moore's comedy thrown in there as well. This one actually won the Palme d'Or, which is the Best Picture award from the Cannes Film Festival. So that was a huge honor and a fantastic documentary film. And then finally, I watched 2 of my newer pickups. Sorry, my foot's falling asleep. Watched 2 of my newer pickups from the Criterion Collection. The first one being the most recent release that I have from Criterion, and that is Memories of Murder by Bong Joon-ho. Such a fantastic film based on a true story of the serial killer in South Korea, what was at the time the first serial killer in South Korea in the 1980s and early 90s, and just a fantastic exploration of the toll that an unsolved case can take on the policemen who were trying to find this guy and trying to arrest him, and kind of the toll these kinds of events can have on a town, on a country even. Such a fantastic movie, and I just absolutely loved this one. Again, Bong Joon-ho is fantastic. And then final film that I watched for June 2021, I kind of saved the best for last. That is Mulholland Drive by David Lynch. This was my first feature film that I saw from David Lynch. I've also seen the first season and a half of Twin Peaks. Really enjoyed that, but I definitely enjoyed this film. It's a bit of a mindfuck at first. You really don't know what you're watching, and the storyline is all over the place. The plot is not linear. It's kind of all over the place. So you really have to read a lot into this movie. I had to do some research after the movie to try to comprehend it. It's not an easy film to watch, but it's so good. I loved what he was going for. I loved the kind of the commentary on Hollywood, kind of the commentary on just human beings in general that I really enjoyed. Fantastic performances in this movie. You have Naomi Watts playing the lead role. You have Justin Theroux, I believe is his name, in this, and Laura Herring, who plays this character here, Rita. Such a fantastic performance from her as well. I loved this one, Mulholland Drive. Alright, those are the 23 movies and TV shows that I watched for June 2021. I look forward to doing these types of videos again in the future, hopefully every month from here on out. Not promising that when school starts I won't wind up skipping a month here or there, but I'm definitely going to try to stick to this as much as possible because I think it's a fun thing to do and a fun thing to kind of recap everything I watch. I probably won't be watching 23 movies every month. Again, my average is usually around 10 to 15. But anyway, I hope you all are having a great week, and definitely stay tuned for what I have coming on the channel. I'm getting ready to go on vacation up to Wisconsin, so I won't be posting for a few days, but I may have a video related to that. And then the Barnes & Noble Criterion sale starts tomorrow on the Barnes & Noble website, as well as in-store, so I will have a couple videos related to that coming up on the channel. I plan on picking up way too many Criterions this month, so definitely stay tuned for that. I hope you all, again, have an amazing week. See you later.